All right, so today we're gonna do 5.7 and we're gonna take a look at difference of squares. Yesterday we were factoring trinomials, and here's a trinomial that says what? X squared plus 0x minus 4. So how do we factor this? So remember from yesterday, what we try to do is what? Make two brackets. Okay, so we're going to make two brackets, and the brackets need to start with what? All right, so we have x and x because that's going to create x squared. That's what I need here. And again, how do I get 4? By multiplying two numbers. These two numbers have to multiply to 4. What are the two numbers that multiply to 4? 1 and 4 and 2 times 2. Now, which of these pairs is going to give you 0x? So we look at this and we see that this has to be what? One has to be negative, one has to be positive. So as long as one is negative and one is positive, you're going to get 0x. So the answer is minus 2 plus 2. All right, so let's try to multiply binomials and see what happens in these different cases. So let's multiply these. You get x times x, right? And then that gives you what? X squared. X times negative 3, that gives you negative 3x. And then 3 times x, that gives you positive 3x. And 3 times 3 is negative 9.
How do you know it's negative 3?
All right, now let's simplify this. What would you get? X squared. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So all you're going to have is minus 9. Okay? And that's going to be basically the same look for all of these, because notice that the brackets are pretty much the same, except one has what? Minus 4 and one has plus 4. Right? So it's going to be exactly the same thing here. X times x. You keep doing this, and what are you going to get? X squared minus 4x plus 4x minus what? 16, which gives you x squared minus 16. So notice that when we multiply these two brackets, the middle term disappears. So you only end up with what? The x squared term and then the last constant term. All right, so same thing here. If one's plus and one's minus, so what are you going to get? You're going to get x squared, right? Minus 6x plus 6x, okay? And then minus what? Minus 36, which is simply x squared minus 36. Okay, so remember what we're trying to do though. We're not trying to expand, we're trying to factor. So what does that mean? We're trying to go from here back to the brackets. So we're trying to get from these two terms here into the two brackets. So when it looks like this, when you have two terms like this, one positive, one negative, and they're both what? Perfect squares, then the brackets are going to be exactly the same. X plus 3, x minus 3. But one plus, one minus. Okay? All right. Let me write that down. So let's write that down. So here's a note. Okay? When it looks like this, I'll just write it like this. A squared minus b squared. This is called a difference of squares. Okay? We're going to call it difference of squares. So what does a difference of square look like? The first term there is going to be a perfect square. And then you have minus a second term that is another perfect square. Do you know what perfect squares are? Perfect squares. Let me list some perfect squares for you. 4, 1, 9, 16. What's another perfect square? 25. Next. 36. 49. So do you understand what perfect squares are?
Yes.
When you square root it, you'll get what? A whole number. So a perfect square is a number that, what happens? You multiply it twice, right? To get another number here. Anyway, you can square root it to a whole number.
Is this the lesson?
Yes. Okay. So a difference of squares look like this. Okay. So I'm gonna basically tell you what a difference of squares is. Okay. Has a positive, perfect square, and a negative perfect square. If it looks like this, if there's a positive perfect square and then there's a negative perfect square, the way you basically do this is you square root both terms. You square root it to get what? The square root of a squared is what? A. Okay. And the square root of b squared is what? B. Yes? Do you understand that? Yes? So what the brackets, if you factor a difference of squares, it's going to look like this. A, and minus b, and plus b. Is everyone okay with that? So, look at this one. Is this a perfect difference of squares? Is this a difference of squares? Yes. Why? Right, you can square root both of them and get a whole number, and one is positive, one is negative, right? So this is a difference of squares. So all I need to do is square root x squared and square root what? 36. And what are the answers for these? X and 6. So if I factor x squared minus 36, it will look like this. X times x and 6 times 6. One negative, one positive. Do you understand that? Yes? So that's very easy, yes? As long as you recognize it as a difference of squares, all you have to do is square root them and just use those numbers to make your brackets. Fairly easy? Yeah? As long as you remember though, right? So that's very important. Okay, so let's try this one. I guess this one's very similar to what we had. But anyways. That's right. So here, all you need to do is what? Square root both of them. Y squared. And square root 36. You get, if you square root y squared, what do you get? Y. Yes. And if you square root 36, what do you get? 6. So when I create two brackets out of this, it's simply going to look like what? Y times y, okay, and 6 times 6. One negative, one positive. Yes, because one has to be negative, one has to be positive,
Doesn't matter which
so
one.
that the middle term disappears.
So okay, cancel it out.
Yes, so it gets 0. So you see there's no x term there. Okay, and it doesn't matter which one is negative, which one is positive. You could write y plus 6, y minus 6 if you want. Okay? All right, so let's try b here. Now, can you square root 8
No.
and get a whole number?
No.
No. So this is not a difference of squares. Well, it doesn't look like a difference of squares, right? So what do we have to do? First things first is remember what I said to do. Always try to what? Common factor out whatever you can. Can you common factor anything? Do these two have a common factor?
2.
Yeah, 2. So that means I can divide both of them by 2, right? So that means I can take out a 2 from everything.
So it's supposed to do that instead.
Yeah, you have to do this first. Yeah. So you take out a 2 from the 8, what would you get? Remember, 8 is what? 2 times 4, yeah? So if I take out the 2, I would get 4 left. I am taking out the 2 here, so I would get what? Negative b squared.
So that's it?
No, not yet. Now, look inside the bracket now. Do you think we can factor this anymore? Can you break it up into something times something again?
You can
And it looks like we can factor it again. Okay, we're trying to factor. So, can you square root 4? Can you square root b squared?
Yeah.
Yes. So that means this must be a what? Difference of squares now. Okay. So what I would write, the next one is 2 bracket, 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 bracket. Now what goes into the brackets? Again, how do you get 4? What times what gives you 4?
2 times.
2 times 2 gives you 4, right? Again, you think about it, square rooting 4 equals 2. What times what gives you b squared? What
B
time?
squared?
B. How do you get b squared? B times b, so it has to be times b. But one has to be what? Negative, one has to be positive. Is everyone okay? So that's it. That right there is the factored form, fully factored form of 8 minus 2b squared.
Okay, so
Everyone understand that? Yes? Okay. All right, let's try C then. Okay, so now we have C. Does it look like we can square root everything here? Yeah.
yes.
We can square root 9 and b squared. We can square root 81. So if we square root this front part, 9b squared, we get what? We get?
7?
No. 3, what? 3b, right? Because 3b times 3b will give me what? 9b squared. And what times what gives me 81? So can I square root 81 to get a whole number? That is 9. Okay, so this is a difference of squares, yes. So that means I can make 2 brackets, and the 2 brackets will get what? 3b times 3b to get 9b squared, and 9 times 9 to get 81. So one has to be negative, one has to be positive.
What?
Is that good? Oh, you know what? I should have maybe factored out the 9 first.
Yeah, what if you did
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, right. You know what? We could factor out the 9 first too. And that's what I generally like to do. Okay, so I can divide everything by 9, yes? So that means I will get what? 9 bracket b squared minus what? Minus 9. Okay, now all I need to do here then is have 9 bracket b times what? B minus 3 times what? 3. And those are exactly the same. Although I do like this one better. I like this one better because that's fully factored. Okay, because you can see here, you do have common factors in here, which I don't usually like. So what common factor do you see at the front here? The first bracket. Hello? What common factor do you see in the first bracket? It's a 3, right? What common factor do you see in this bracket? 3. 3 times 3 is what? 9. You see this 9 right there? Right at the front? Yeah.
So would D be x minus 4 times x plus 4?
Yeah, very good. So all I need to do is what? Square root x squared and square root 16. And so all I have is what? X times x, right? To get x squared. And 4 times 4 to get 16.
Plus minus.
Remember, 1 always has to be minus. Oh, ho, ho, ho. We got a big problem here, don't we? What's the big problem? This one is what? They're both positive, right? And I said at the top that what? One had to be positive, one had to be negative, right? No, you cannot do this. This is not a difference of squares. Okay, so you cannot factor it. So here, in this case, you would have to say cannot factor. Because remember, the problem is, if you make one negative and one positive, why is that wrong? Because negative 4 times positive 4 gives you what? Negative 4 times positive 4 gives you negative 16, right? But I want a what? A positive 16, not a negative. Sorry. I need a positive 16, right? Not a negative 16. Do you understand? So that doesn't work. So you cannot factor this one. All right. That was a trick question. Huh? Yeah, just leave it like that. Now about E. Is this a difference of squares? All right, so let's take a look at this one. Is this a perfect square? Can we square root 100? X squared? Yes. Can we square root 1? Yes. Is one positive and one negative? Yes. So this is a difference of squares. Okay. I generally, though, like the middle term to be negative, right? I like it to be positive and negative. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to factor out a negative. So what I can do is factor out a negative. That will turn everything to the opposite of what I see there. So instead of a negative 100x squared, it's going to look like what? 100x squared. And instead of a positive 1, I'm going to see what? Minus 1. So now it looks more like a difference of squares that we're used to. We have the negative in the middle instead of at the front. So all you have to do is just what? Common factor out the negative sign first. Okay. So now what we're going to do, we're going to draw 2 brackets. Remember, keep that negative in front. And we're going to square root 100x squared. And that gives me what? What's the square root of 100? 10, right? 10 times 10 gives me 100, right? So that's be 10x. And the square root of 1 is simply 1. So again, remember, this times this has to give me 100x squared. That would be 10x and 10x. 10x times 10x gives me 100x squared. And how do I get 1? What times what will give me 1? Well, 1 times 1 will give me 1. But 1 has to be negative, 1 has to be positive because there is no middle term. There's no x term. I hope you understood that. Let's try the last one right here. And question F. All right, why don't you try it on your own for a second? All right, let's do this last question quickly. All you need to do is what? Square root y squared. So you get what? 5y. And you square root 169 w squared. What's 169 w squared? Square root it. Gonna be 13 w. So what does that mean? Well, I can draw two brackets now. And to get 25y squared, I have to do what? 5y times 5y. And then I have to do what? To get 169, you have to do 13w times 13w. One has to be what? Negative. The other has to be positive. All right, that's the end of the lesson. Go and try to do your practice work. Have a good day, everybody.